Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be showing you my Hussif project, or my housewife. So this started way before Christmas, and then I was making my own Hussif because, as I explained in the video, I'm wanting to do a load of hand sewing. I want to make some hand-stitched silk underwear. And then as I did and worked out my own Hussif, I then also decided to make a couple of Hussifs for my two daughters. My daughter from Germany was coming over for Christmas, and my other daughter also was going to be here. So I was going to make them two Hussifs as well, which is why you have not seen this video till now. Because of course I didn't want to show you before Christmas because that would have ruined the surprise. So here we are after Christmas. My daughter has gone back to Germany now, which made me very sad, and everything is really back to normal. As you will see, my hair is very different now because it's grown quite a lot. And obviously you've seen that last video. I was sort of talking about where I'm going with my hair, so do check out last week's video if you haven't watched that. I have got another video coming up about my hair because, as you can see, I've gone with the fringe. So there is another video coming up about my hair, maybe next week's video actually. So do subscribe, hit the like button, all those sorts of lovely, wonderful things would be so amazing. With the event of AI, as I've mentioned before, it's incredibly difficult for small YouTubers like me to get noticed and to be suggested to other people on YouTube. So everything you do, comment, all of that sort of thing would really help. I love to hear your thoughts and ideas. It's very helpful, and I'm really pleased that it is of use and inspiration to you out there as well. And also I should explain to those lovely people that put a comment on my last video saying, "Oh, are you okay? What's happened?" I know it has been an awfully long time since my last video. I was preparing for Christmas and everything, and yeah, I just sort of petered out mid-December, didn't I? Sorry about that, my apologies. And then of course Christmas was on us. Then I have had family and friends and everything here, which has been absolutely wonderful. But hopefully now I am back on the YouTube horse. Is that the right sort of analogy? Anyway, I'm back here hopefully every week now, and doing a video every week. Obviously, all being well, and you know, the world not exploding into chaos as it does seem to be. And talking of Christmas, thanks so much, Chris, for your support on Ko-fi. I do really appreciate it very much. So thank you, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you too. So with all that said, let's get on and make a Hussif. And if you watch carefully, you can see my hair grow quite significantly through the filming of this one video. So as I've mentioned in a few videos before, I'm quite interested in making my own underwear, and I've got a bunch of silk up in my fabric stash up there. It was it's a sort of an off-white silk, and I've put it up to my face, and it's a little bit cream for me, and I quite like a bright white near my face if I'm going to have white or cream. And so I have this silk, and I have quite a lot of it because I got it in a sort of dead stock sale type thing. It was a very, very good price, and then when I got it home I found it had some holes in it, so I took it back to the store and they said, "Oh, keep that, but here, have a whole load more." So I did rather well out of all this silk. And personally I found that when I try and stitch silk on my machine, it just sort of eats it, or it's incredibly difficult to do. So I thought it might be quite nice to do it as a sort of a really slow craft and actually sort of hand sew it. So sort of, you know, hand sew my delicates, my unmentionables. I thought it'd be rather lovely, and I've got this wonderful idea about like sort of monogramming it and just sort of doing it as a real mindful, slow craft sort of thing. So with that, well, it was a long story short, but with that in mind, I started to think about the materials and equipment I had to do hand sewing, and then I saw one of Lately Fashionable. It was Lately Fashionable, one of the channels that I mentioned in my 12 top YouTube channels video. So she was doing a bit of hand sewing, and she showed the Housewife or Hussif or whatever that she used, that she'd made to do her hand sewing. And it's one of these really sort of historic thing that a lot of cosplay sort of reenactors have, apparently, from what I can understand. And it was something that housewives maybe used to have and put in their pockets, so they always had something to sort of stitch and mend something. Well, I'm not sure whether Housewife came out of this little piece of equipment or whether the equipment was named after the housewife. If you know, please pop it in the comments below. I'm sure there are a load of knowledgeable people out there that actually know that. But yeah, I don't know which came first, chicken or egg, you know. So essentially this little housewife or Hussif is sort of like a little hand sewing equipment pouch type thing. And I thought, well, that would be perfect. So then I went down the rabbit hole and decided I needed to make one of those before I started doing my hand sewing, because, you know, get all prepared with the equipment. So I went to my design book and then basically started sketching out ideas. So I'll show you where I've got to on this. So I'm just going to show you my workings here, because originally I started off listing out all the things that I wanted to put in my Hussif, my housewife. I then sort of laid them all out. I sort of measured various things, decided on where they should go. And then I wanted, obviously, the inside, the lower pieces that are going to be folded inside to be smaller in depth than obviously the bits that come around the outside. I did this sort of drawing here to sort of show how it would all wrap round and have a front on it. So originally I was going to do 4 pockets. And then I changed that to 3. When I tried to work out how it was going to wrap around and where the pockets were sitting, I changed it to 3. I think that will be enough. So I've got sort of the finished dimensions, and I've sort of got some hidden pockets in there as well. So some of the way that I've done it essentially is that I have put some front pockets on top of a pocket behind. So this last piece, well, that's actually sort of one up now. This last piece will have a big pocket and then 2 smaller pockets on the top. So that's the plan. Let's make the pattern and move on with it and see if it will work. Excuse me, I'm getting a bit hot. Of course, I've used the equipment that I have to measure it all out and make sure the equipment I have will fit in this roll. So really pleased with this little design. Of course, I have masses of scrap fabrics. So the next thing to do is to get out my scrap fabrics and decide which fabrics to use. I have heaps of gorgeous fabrics. This is the box. It's one of these cubes that goes in the Calyx unit. Yes, it's an IKEA Calyx. So I have, it's full. It's a full box of scraps. And in here I have sort of like the leftovers. So that's the leftovers for the Grace trousers. There is, oh, that's actually the leftovers for a wearable toile for my trouser block. So this is eons old. So anyway, heaps of fabrics in here, and they all have a memory and a story. So what I'm going to do is go through and find the fabrics and find them all that sort of coordinate. And then from there, I can sort of work out what I'm going to use how. These are the fabrics that I am going to use. The outside fabric is going to be this lovely black watch tartan, which I made a handbag out of for our first cycle touring trip around Europe. We went off for a year on a cycle touring trip, and that was in 2014. So that'll be the outside. And then I have this fabric, which is sort of a tartany type fabric. Very fine, lightweight, and I'm going to use that for the lining, I think, because it will blend in quite nicely. So I've got this, which is the fabric I used for the Grace trousers. Now, it did bobble, so I wasn't very pleased with it, but of course I'm not really going to wash this, and I'm actually going to use that inside because these 2 fabrics are not very structurally heavy. They're quite drapey, whereas this has got quite a piece of sort of heft to it. So I'm going to use that as an interlining between those 2, just to give it a little bit more rigidity. It's a sort of canvas, so it's got a bit of structure. It's sort of a solid woven fabric. The next thing I need to do is cut out pattern pieces for the design. So I have all the measurements as you would have seen in the book. They're just rectangles really, so not hard at all. But I do think it's going to be better to make patterns because Christmas is coming up and I may make more than one. We won't say any more than that, but what I thought was I'd make the pattern pieces and then I could knock them out a bit more quickly. But of course, because they're quite small, rectangles and things, I'm actually just going to use scrap paper, so I'm not going to use my big pieces of paper. So that using loads of scrap fabric, scrap paper, perfect. All done. I have The main body, that will be, I'll need to cut a lining out of this. I will need to cut the cover fabric and also the interlining out of this. So that will be done 3 times. I then have my pockets. I have pocket 1, pocket, and they're all different sizes of course, pocket 2, pocket 3 and 4 and 5. This is actually wider than the other pockets because I've decided to sort of gather it a little bit, gather it in and put a bit of bias binding on the top to sort of make a couple of roomy pockets on the front. That's the idea. So that's a bit wider and I'll gather it a bit. I've made a little pin cushion piece. So yeah, that's all of my pattern pieces right there really, ready to go. The other thing that I've done is I've gone through my bias binding stash and I've found a couple of bias bindings that I think will look really nice. So I have this bias binding which goes really well with the tartan for the outside, and it also goes really nicely with the inside pockety fabrics. I think it's got that sort of dark green in there. Also goes nicely with the red, so that's really good. And then I found some thinner navy bias binding which I wanted to use here on the pocket, because this pocket, as I say, I'm going to ruche it, I'm going to gather it up to make them sort of slightly more roomy pockets, and because I'll have gathered the top edge on it, I will want some bias binding to sort of finish that off. I've got the bias bindings ready, I've got the pattern pieces ready, I just need to sort of cut it out and sew up some bits really. Yeah, that's the next thing. Onward. I actually carried on, I got steaming ahead and basically carried on and did a whole bunch. So I have cut out the cover, I've also cut out the lining and the interfacing piece. So that's the sort of, yeah, the interlining. And I've just stitched that around the edge just to hold those 2 things in place, because it has occurred to me that I'm going to need to make everything on the lining, which is another reason it was good to interface it, because obviously the lining itself has no weight at all. So this I'm going to use, I need to put everything on here, and then the last step will actually be attaching the outside and putting bias binding around the edge. But everything, all the pockets I need to actually attach onto this lining piece essentially. So I have made all the pockets, they were really simple. I basically just put the lining piece and the front piece together, right sides facing, zoomed along there, and then obviously the ends are not joined in, so then I could just turn it out. So they're all nicely finished now. Hopefully you can see all the raw edges are on the inside, which is great, because then I don't have to really finish them. I've done that with all the pockets, so they're all done. Now this one, see here, I've done the same here, but I've gone on a bit further with this one because I ruched it and I put the bias binding on the top, and obviously this pocket, this is pocket 4 and 5, is on top of pocket 3. So there's sort of like a pocket in here, and then there are 2 pockets at the front that have got a bit more, they're a bit more roomy, you know. I don't know whether to put a little button close or anything on them, just to sort of hold them shut if I wanted to. Not quite sure what's going to go in there yet. Of course, when it's rolled up, nothing's coming out anyway, so I might leave them as is. But those 2 are sort of together, and I have stitched down the middle to make 2 distinct pockets. So this bit then will go on the bottom here. Hopefully you can see. This bit will go on the bottom like that, and mainly will be attached with bias binding, the bias binding that goes around the edge. So I might just stitch it on, almost like just tack it on so that it's actually on, so that I don't lose any of the pieces when I put the bias binding on, because of course there's going to be the outside, the interlining, the lining, pocket 3, and then this other pocket on the top, all needs to fit inside the bias binding. Then these pockets will go on there, not in the right position yet, but hey, they'll all go on there like that. That's the idea. And again, they will get caught in the side, but I will need to stitch them on. Now what I'm thinking is I'm just gonna sort of stitch just in on the edge, just slightly in on the edge, just to catch it on here, and then turn it over so that just that very edge will be turned over. So that's the idea. The markings for where these pockets sit, I've actually notched the interlining so I can put them in the right places. I've got all that laid out. Now the other thing that I've done is I wanted to use this wool cashmere as a needle case. So what I've done is I've just used my very blunt pinking shears, and it was quite tricky to do on this fabric, but I've just basically pinked, I don't know if you can you see that? Yeah. So I've just basically pinked the edges, and then that will just sort of stitch there on top of pocket number 2. That's the idea. Now, remembering that pin cushion that I have in the top corner, I'm going to put it in the top corner so that my scissors go around it. So when it's all squashed flat, it will go into the space and sort of take up that space. I did that like this. Essentially, I made a little base out of the fabric that the Doris fabric that it's going on, because it's going to sit on there like that. And then this obviously was cut bigger. This was the pincushion piece of fabric here, which is bigger than the actual pincushion. And then I gathered around the edge so I could draw it in and then stitch it on. Now I've turned it through and I've stuffed it with a little bit of old sort of cushion filling stuff that I've got in a bag in there that came out of an old cushion, I think. Anyway, have a little bit of that. So I've put it in there, and then it occurred to me I could put it on my wrist. I just thought, wouldn't it be great if I could put it on my wrist when I'm doing my hand sewing, if I could make a little strap, because I was thinking about how am I going to attach it to here, and I thought, well, the easiest way, I was going to hand tack it, and then I thought, well, actually the easiest way, probably just to put a couple of press studs here, and then the other piece of the press stud on here, and I can just pop it on. I thought that'd be an easier way to do it, but then I thought I could pop it off, and if I had a strap, I could pop it on there. Brilliant, brilliant. Now I can have a pin cushion on my wrist while I do it. But it occurs to me, if I put a pin in here, it's going to come all the way through, and that's going to be hurty, and I don't want that being hurty. That would be horrid. So I thought, how can I stop that? I need to put something solid in here. Now I haven't yet stitched up this edge yet, so I can still get something in there. And then I had a brainwave. What I thought I needed is like a bit of solid plastic or something that would sort of go in there so pins wouldn't go through. Now we have glass milk bottles. We basically go and buy our milk at the local Foursquare, where they have glass milk bottles, so that we can return the milk bottles and then we get new milk in milk bottles, and we don't have the plastic waste that we would if we bought the milk in the supermarket that comes in plastic. This is a long way of saying that I didn't have any of the plastic I had in mind for this project. So I actually went and asked my neighbour if I could get in their recycle bin. And ta-da! Exhibit A. I have now got, I've given it a good wash out, but yes, they had heaps of these, of course, in their recycle bin. So I have the raw materials now. What I'm going to do is just sort of, I'm going to get the big scissors on here, but basically just cut out a piece and then put that in the back of here, because I think the pin won't go through it. I did get quite a bit done while I was, not showing you what I was doing, because, it's quite a quick project. It doesn't take long. You're like, whip, 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 and there you go. It's not a long project. I think the more difficult thing, let me turn you up a bit actually, because now you're low down. There, that's better, isn't it? Yes, I don't have to crouch like this so much. So of course the trick with this is figuring out how you're going to do it and what the pieces should look like, and all the little bits in there. Try not to over engineer it, but put all the bits in that you want. That takes a bit of time and effort, but of course there aren't any instructions or pattern pieces like most of the things that I do, really. You've got to sort of figure it out as you go. Get the plastic in here, put the press studs on here, and then, will I be ready? Oh no, I've got the cotton thing to work out, because if you remember on the cotton I'm going to use these reels of cotton, because these are all my reels of cotton really are these sort of Gutermann thread. Are they Gutermann thread? These ones, the way I've done it, I've measured it so that I can get two. You can't see now, can you? That's the trouble. This is not very easy to show you, but basically I can get two of these along the length. And I figure, because this hole goes all the way through, you can see right through it. I figure if I get a bit of ribbon, I can just thread it through, and then that means that the cotton reel will be able to be sort of like, the cotton can spool off as I do it. And the other thing that I have is I have cotton reels like this, which is basically the leftover thread. So if I'm taking thread off a bobbin, say, and I don't have any more of that thread, I'll put it onto a little reel like this, and then I can just use it for hand sewing. So my plan is to have my current project's main colour plus one with multiple colours on like that next to each other. So I need to figure out that, because again that will need to be secured into the sides when I put the bias binding on. So probably the next thing to do is the pincushion. Then I need to figure out this thread system. Yeah. So I'll do that and I'll bring you back when I've got somewhere. I have encased the plastic. It is in hard backed. Need some poppers next. So these are all my vintage charity shop poppers. I'm going to need 2.5, aren't I? Because I'll need receiver poppers on the band and also on the pocket. So yeah. And I think 2 will hold it firmly. So that's what I'm going to find. Okay, should be something in here. I have stitched the little poppers on here. I have stitched the poppers on the back of there, and it goes on and off like anything. Sits on there and then it just pops off, and I've got to make the band yet, but I haven't done that yet because it's not critical for the rest of it. So I've got all of these bits tacked onto the side now, and I have stitched the pockets on the base. So I stitched it on there, I stitched it on there. That little needle flap sort of looks like it hangs down, but it won't ever be like that way. It will be sort of flat. I had a couple of different goes with how to get the thread on, and I've decided that actually just some little loops are the way to go, because this, not that I can probably do it with one hand. Can I do it with one hand? Probably not. Oh yes, I can. So the idea being that they will just sit inside like that. Put that up there. So there'll be 2 of them, and then they won't be able to fall out, partly because this will be folded up anyway, but I've put that ribbon in so far that it'd be difficult to get it over the end piece. So when they're both, it's going to flop over and irritate me all the time, isn't it? So when they're in, they will sit like that, but as I say again, it will be flat. It won't actually be hanging down like that. Technically, I think the next thing would be to actually put the outside on, but I quite fancy the idea of doing some embroidery, like putting a monogram on the outside of this. So I'll have to have a little think about that and see if I do that. I've got a little tiny embroidery hoop, so I could just sort of pop it on and maybe just do my initials, but that's going to take a lot more time. So may or may not happen, or the video may be delayed while I do that. Well, this is driving me mad. This needle case keeps dropping down like this, and yeah, I can't stand it anymore. I'm going to have to take it off and change it. The other thing is that I think I would quite like to put some sort of flaps on the top of this pocket to sort of keep it closed, and also it's quite a shallow but wide pocket, so I think I want to put a line of stitching down the middle of this to make it into 2 pockets. The other reason is that I've been doing a bit of Swedish death cleaning, and I found this little case. Now this little case is, I didn't know what it was for years and years and years, but it is actually a vintage match holder. So essentially the matchbook would have gone inside these little tabs here, and you'd strike the matches and everything would be good. And this was sort of like the smart way to have your matches, I think. So this I actually found in my family home when I was a child, because we were having renovations done, and this was sort of amongst the rubble, and I picked it up and it was all tarnished. I said, oh, this is cool, and my dad said that I could have it. So I was about 9, 10, and I have kept this all this time, and it was in a box, and I actually took it out and I gave it a bit of a metal polish, cleaned it up, and for the first time now, of course, I was able to Google it and image search, because of course when I found this, Google had not been invented. The internet was not a thing, which is strange to think now, but true. The internet was not a thing. So I didn't really know what this was, and nobody I spoke to really knew what this was. There were suggestions that it was something to do with matches, but we didn't really know. But now I do know, because I've looked on the internet and there are images of similar things in antique shops basically being sold, and they're labelled with 1920s matchbook holder or 1930s matchbook holder. So I think that this is from probably 1920s to 1940s, I would think. So I found this and I thought, well, it's a lovely little thing. I'd like to use it somehow, and it happens to fit beautifully and just in there like that. But I thought it's a neat, closed, secure little case. I could put some buttons in here. So I'm going to put a stitch down the middle and put flaps on. I am also going to fix this, because clearly it's going to do that and it's irritating me. So I think I'm going to have to move this further up so that it flaps down. But I think we're sort of on the home straight now. But then again, I keep adding things because I think of new things to do. But the next thing I'm going to do is undo this pocket flap yet again, because I've had this on and off about 3 times now. I'm going to undo this and then work out like a flap system and then stitch down the middle as well. Move this, of course, because this is irritating. Okay, I'll get on with that and I'll bring you back when I've sort of reorganised that just a little bit. So I have put some little flaps on. I've actually used a little contrast fabric which I had in my stash. This is from a dress that I really love. Anyway, so that, I think I'm just going to put that down with press studs. I think the easiest way is going to be to put a couple of press studs in each corner to fold that down. This I've decided, I should have done it first probably, but because I had the seam through the middle, I'm going to have to hand stitch that on in the centre, I think, and then these will pop down like that. So it's a bit of hand stitching with the poppers and sewing the needle case on, and of course I still need to do the wristband for this wrist pin cushion. Okay, so I'm going to try and get on a little bit more with these Hussifs. I have got out a whole load of fabrics which I think sort of have memories and are, yes, special fabrics. So that's the fabric I used to make my wedding dress for my daughter's wedding, so mother of the bride sort of dress. This fabric here is a fabric that I made a handbag out of years ago, and then actually my daughter, my younger daughter, had the handbag made out of this fabric as well. So I've got various sort of special fabrics, and I think they sort of go together. So I'm just going to try and make a bit of a plan of how they'll all sort of look. And then obviously I want to try and get on with them. I think I'm going to do both with the same backing fabric as mine, because I think this is quite a hard wearing fabric. I know that it is quite resilient because, as I say, I made a handbag with it. I think I've got enough for 2, and then we'll all 3 have the same fabric on the back, but on the inside they'll be different. And of course I'm hoping to monogram them as well, so they will be different in that respect. Hair. This is the first day I have tried something different. I moved my parting from here to here so that the undercut is underneath here. And yeah. Well, of course, I've been zooming on with these Christmas presents and I haven't videoed it as I've gone along, have I? But I do have all of the pockets now on this one. I've put little flaps on, and I made contrast flaps on the underside, which I thought was rather nice. I changed from my original design where I had a buttonhole in this flap. That was a nightmare to sew. So on my version, I've done a little button and a little buttonhole, but that was just a nightmare. So what I've done on this one and also the other one is to put a little ribbon loop, and then I've just selected some buttons. So they're different buttons because I'm using up sort of single buttons in my button stash, and also buttons that have memories. So this little button here, I got these buttons when the children were little tiny tots, and I made some blue corduroy dresses for them, and these buttons were on those dresses. So very lovely to put them on something else again for them. So, but the other one's going to be white on here. slightly different colour palettes. So this one has got, this is the dress I wore for my daughter's wedding. This is actually the fabric I wore for my daughter's wedding in the garden. This is a dress that I made years and years and years ago, and I've worn it a lot. I wore it on my cycle touring trip as well. And this fabric is as well. It was the skirt I made for the cycle touring trip. This fabric is a blouse that I still wear. Oh, and of course I have also made a little pincushion the same. I've yet to do the poppers and the wristband on that, but that will sit on the same place. And then the other one is slightly different because obviously I've only got a certain amount of different fabrics and I wanted to sort of mix it up. So again, wedding dress fabric. This is my Dorothy blouse from my trip to Europe, if you remember. These are my green corduroy trousers, which I wear all of the time. And that's the maroon fabric from my capsule wardrobe, my summer capsule wardrobe, which I put, I'll put a link up to that. And then this is a blouse that I made, this sort of beautiful beige sort of flowery coloured thing here. So yes, all coming together. I've got another pin cushion for this to go onto here, and the buttons I've chosen here, again another one of these little sparkly buttons for this daughter, and then little green flower buttons. So all coming together. I've done a little bit of sketching for the monograms, and that is going to be a bit of a trick. I'm not sure, I've never done a monogram before. I've never really done that much embroidery, so it is going to be well, it'll be a first, you know, it'll be new, and I do like to do new things on this channel. So all in all, we will have 3 different versions of this Hussif. They'll all have the same backs, they'll all have the same linings, and they all have the same interlining that I put on, but I've changed up the buttons and the fabrics on the inside, same design, same pockets and all of that, just sort of ease the production line. It is actually after Christmas now, because we're actually exchanging our Christmas presents later on, because my daughter's coming out from Germany, which is very exciting, but we're actually having a sort of a faux Christmas later in the beginning of January. So I have actually been dipping in and out during the Christmas period with my other daughter, and of course my husband is still here, and so it's been quite busy. But I have been dipping in and out and doing it the odd little bit, so I haven't managed to film everything. So I thought I'd just do a quick catch up. The technique I've been doing really is that I have been testing it out on my version, so that basically I stuff up on my version first, and then after that I've been working on the girls. This is my version. It's almost finished. So I have done some embroidery here with my initials. Quite pleased with that, the way it's coming out. Maybe reversed for you, I'm not sure. I've got a button here, and I've got to figure out the closing, which I'm not quite sure how to do that. I have ideas, but not there yet. This is my version, so as you can see, it's got the little pin cushion, which is removable, of course, and then it has the wrist strap here. It has the needle case on the front here. Now I've changed it for my daughters because I've realised that if I put things in the pockets, that's going to sort of bulge out, and given that needles are sort of straight and rigid, that might cause problems here. But anyway, on my version I did it here. I also did little buttonholes and buttons. I didn't do that again because these little buttonholes are minute and a real pain to sew. Then I have the little ribbons for the cotton reels. I haven't got one in here, but you'll see it on another version. I have the little gathered pockets for extra sort of depth in the pocket, and then another big pocket here. So that works really quite nicely. I've done a green bias binding around here, and the way I did it was I stitched it on with machine stitching on the outside, and then I hand stitched the inside. Now that worked quite well. The problem I have, of course, realised now is that I did it so that the seam of the bias binding was on the front, which wasn't ideal. In fact, there are 2 seams. There's the beginning and end seam here, and also a join seam here. So not the most beautiful, but it worked. And I've done a little button here with the same matching thread. So that's mine. I'm really pleased with that so far. I'll show you them again when I finish them. Very bright this morning in my sewing room, and the sun's coming right in. It's not ideal, but I just wanted to quickly show you these Hussifs finished. So I have all 3 finished. My Hussif was the prototype. So essentially what I realised was putting the monogram here meant that this cord that closes it was going to come through the middle, so I've changed that on the other two for my girls. So I did a friendship bracelet edging in various colours, and then mine, as you would have seen before, has the little pin cushion with the wrist strap. My needle case is here, and that's just in a sort of a woolly fabric that doesn't fray that I had. I've got two little pockets here which I closed with buttons, which I rethought in the girls version. This is for the two cotton reels, and then I have little pockets here which I've put all the bits and pieces in, and I have actually got a little wax, little packet of wax in here because my daughter actually had some wax, so we shared that amongst us. So that, oh, and then of course I have my little label on there which is handmade by me. So that was my version, and then I have done two for my daughters. So we have two here. Oh, this lighting, sorry about this lighting. It is not ideal, I realise, but anyway. So this one, of course, I have the monogram on the side. Again, I've done a sort of a friendship bracelet cord that then went sort of thinner into more of a plait. What I did with the girls' versions was I put the needle case at the top, and then I just hold it down with a little button, and inside is a sort of a cotton wadding type stuff just to put the needles in, so that worked a treat. Then again, the little pin cushion that you can remove, and then I did these with buttons and ribbons as you would have seen before, and that's all the inside there, again made by me label. So that was one of my daughters, my eldest daughter, and then my younger daughter had more of a blue and red theme, again little monogram here, and a friendship bracelet in sort of blue and white and red. And again, I did the same trick with putting the needle case up at the top. Same thing here, different fabrics, pin cushion that removes, all the little pockets and everything, and the label there. So, did it take me a long time? Yes, a lot longer than I thought, but it was a labour of love. I really enjoyed it, and I'm pleased with these. And I'm sort of, it's one of these types of things that I think hopefully they will have for a very long time, and when they look at it, it will sort of remind them of me and home and all the sort of little fabrics and everything that have gone into this. So anyway, that's it. Just thought I'd show you what I made for Christmas for my girls, and I will see you later. Bye.